Try not to smush him, because I don't want to.
What is it?
It's a bug.
Oh, he said pieces.
Yeah, but
He said too many pieces now.
thanks, Keith. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone out this evening. We have a very good number, and we're glad that you're here. We'll be studying here in just a minute from the book of Proverbs, studying a topic that is, it's applicable to all of us. And so we'll have a lot of things to look at, and I look forward to your comments and your, maybe not looking forward to any questions, but I definitely look forward to comments. So before we begin, if you would bow with me, we'll go to God in a word of prayer. Our holy, righteous Father in heaven, we approach your throne of grace, your throne of mercy and kindness and love. Thankful, Father, for every good blessing in life. We're thankful for your thoughtfulness of us, that you think of us, that you care for us. We're thankful, Father, that you provide for us, that you saw our needs, that you saw the things that we could not do for ourselves, and that you provide for those things so richly, that you sent your Son down to this earth, so willingly sending him, so that through him and through his sacrifice, we can have the hope of heaven, we can have the forgiveness of sins, we can have a relationship with you. Help us, Father, not to overlook this great blessing. Help us to appreciate them to the point that we will do whatever we can to keep them and to maintain them. Father, we're very grateful for this group of people that meet here. We're very grateful for our spiritual family, and we ask you to be with us. Help us to draw closer to one another. Help us to encourage one another and to help one another in this life. We know that there are many of our group that are struggling in various ways. Those who may be physically ill and suffering, and we'd ask you to bless them. Those who may be suffering emotionally, and we'd ask you to comfort them. And those who may be suffering spiritually, and we ask you, Father, to be with them. We ask you to provide an opportunity for them to come back to you and to seek you. Be with us as we enter into the study this evening. Help us to open up our minds to the wisdom that you have left us with regard to the things that you bless us with in this life. Help us to understand that they are things to be used to honor and to glorify you. Watch over us and be with us, Father, in Christ's name. Amen. So there are a lot of topics, a lot of subjects that I'm not always comfortable teaching and preaching about. This is one of them. It's for a different reason probably than what you might think. One reason why I'm not comfortable with it is because I know I have a problem with it. And anytime you know you have a problem with something, anytime you know that it is not something that you're strong at, then it's not something you like to try to tell others what they should do, because you know that you need as much help and as much guidance on that as anyone does. And so that's one of the reasons. Another reason is because I don't feel like I'm very good with these kinds of things. There are other people who are very much more qualified as it were, to be able to talk about wealth and the proper use of it and things like that. But it doesn't mean that I don't understand what the Bible teaches with regard to the topic. And so this evening we're going to just going to dive right into what the Bible has to say about wealth, what it has to say about poverty, generosity and greed. And I apologize for not telling you beforehand, at least not before last night, that we were covering two. I just totally forgot. But before I forget, next week we're going to be covering two lessons as well. The next two lessons in your handouts there, industry and laziness and business. It kind of all three of those go together. And that's the reason why we're kind of putting them together, is because they kind of have a tendency to go together. So as we begin this evening, the question that I would ask you is, Jace, would you do me a favor? Would you run over there and make sure that I clicked on that? Not literally run, just figuratively run. That's right. I need to be careful, right? There we go. All right. So, in this world, how long have we seen those who are rich and those who are poor? Pretty much since the beginning, right? Now you could say the very beginning, the very first family, you didn't have rich and poor because they were all the same, right? There was only one family. But from that point forward, Brother Jeff is right, it's basically been from the beginning, right? There's always been pretty much a separation. There's going to be some that have more and some that have less. How long will that also be? How long will the world, as long as the world lasts, how long will you have rich and poor?
Till eternity, till the Lord comes.
That's right. As long as the world lasts, right? You could say, well, I answered it in the way that I asked the question. There is always going to be rich and poor. And the Bible doesn't teach that that's wrong. Okay? It does not teach. I actually wrote in my notes, I said, despite the utopian efforts of some, which, by the way, tend to end up worse than better, the world has always had the rich and the poor. There's this grand idea on the part of some people that there is a way for us to make everyone the same in this world, and it's just not going to happen. It's just not. Now, you can try to make some things more balanced and all that, and I understand, but it's just not. You're always going to have those who are rich. You're always going to have those who are poor. But there is something consistent between the two. What is the thing that's common between them? God, right? Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 2, the rich and the poor are alike in that the Lord made them all. Right? God made everyone. He made rich, He made poor. Some people are rich because they've done well. Other people are rich because they inherited it. Some people are poor because they made poor decisions. Some people are poor because they inherited it, right? And that's just the way life is, okay? Doesn't mean you have to stay one way or the other, but that's just, it's always going to be that way. As a matter of fact, Jesus actually said that, didn't He? In Matthew chapter 26 and verse 11, after He was there and it was being prepared for His burial, the woman comes and uses the flask of alabaster ointment to anoint Him, and they're all up in arms. Who's all up in arms? Judas primarily, but the disciples, it says, right? All up in arms. Why? We could have used this money to help the poor, right? And Jesus said, why are you getting on to her? Right? He says, for you will always, or you always have the poor with you. Now, in this particular case, what He's trying to say is, there is something that's about to happen right now, and she's doing a good deed in helping to prepare me for this. And so the thing at your forefront of your mind right now should be me, because I'm not going to be here much longer. He goes on to say, You can do, in Mark chapter 14, he says, if you want to do something for the poor later, you can. Right now, the most important thing is me. Right? So I want to ask you, with regard to this, before we move on, does this tell you anything with regard to the work of the church? Should it tell you anything with regard to the work of the church?
Yeah, widows and orphans are more susceptible to that concept.
It's true.
So
They
the
are.
church comes to the rescue through Jesus.
Okay. Does it tell you anything else with regard to the work of the church?
Even though it may have its place, it's not as important as the spiritual work we have.
Yeah. Our work is not primarily social. Should not be. As a matter of fact, it should be very little social. Now, there's parts of us that are benevolent, agreed, but not social. We're not here to create a utopian society. That's not what we're here for. Our charge is to save souls, right? And so, when you look at this particular topic of wealth and poverty, it's always going to be that way. There's going to be both. And we may find ourselves in one or the other or both at some point in time. Right? So, if you have both, with regard to salvation, who has the greater advantage? Never thought I'd ask that question, did you? Who has, yes ma'am?
Okay, you're gonna think this is crazy.
I doubt it.
Throw it out there.
All right.
I think it's easier for the poor because they instinctively, because of their what they're dealing with, tend to depend on God, realize, and hope for a better life, whereas the rich or the well-off are self-sufficient.
Yep. Rely on themselves.
Right.
Yep. And I think James actually talks about that, right? So I won't get into it too much since we're going to be studying the book of James. But I think she's right with regard to who is more willing to seek out salvation. It's the poor. Brother Paul?
I think those who have chosen the Lord have the better advantage, either rich or poor.
Okay. All right. Did I see a hand over here somewhere when I thought I saw one, but somebody was just probably moving. You got something?
I was thinking about the rich young ruler,
Mm-hmm.
when he was seeking, what else must I do to be saved? And he said, sell the stuff.
Yep. Because he trusted in his things, right? Which gets back to the self-sufficient, right? He's thinking that he was self-sufficient. So I asked the question poorly, which is not uncommon. But the answer that I was looking for is neither have an advantage from the standpoint that it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, which is kind of getting back to the way Brother Paul, right? How does our material value or worth affect our qualification for salvation? The answer, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with it, right? So Peter opened his mouth and said, Acts 10, verse 34, truly I understand that God shows no partiality. Now, what was he specifically talking about? Right. Nationality-wise, race, where you come from. He shows no partiality. But what also does that have application to? Rich or poor. He shows no partiality with regard to anything, right? Young, old, rich, poor, tall, short, whatever, right? No partiality. But in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him. Notice these Proverbs, okay, which is what we're supposed to be looking at, is the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 2. Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. And we'll talk more about how he gained these treasures. But the main point of this particular part of our lesson is that the only thing that has anything to do with salvation from death is not how many riches that you have, but righteousness. Riches, Proverbs 11 and verse 4. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. If we would just think about that last one a little bit more. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath. What good is my bank account going to do me when I meet the Lord? Doesn't, right? It just doesn't. It has no effect on it. from the standpoint of that I'm going to be able to use it for anything then. Now, it may say something about the way I lived and therefore having an effect, but it doesn't do me any good on that day in terms of using it. Right? Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. Oh yeah, I meant to look at more than that. Proverbs chapter 11, very quickly. I didn't read the context around it, and I meant to because it says something to us. In verse 1, it says, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with the humble is wisdom. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. I wanted to read the context there because it talks about how they gain these riches. Did you notice that? How they gain these riches. A false balance. Crookedness of the treacherous. He's talking about those who gain these riches, well, in a bad way. And that especially is not going to do them any good on the day of wrath, right? Okay, so, at the same time though, riches do not do us any good in terms of what it does with regard to our salvation, in terms of being able to use it for salvation. But then again, a lack of material wealth does not guarantee righteousness, right? We can't just go around and say, well, I gave away everything, I'm poor, so therefore I'm good to go. No, that doesn't do it either, right? Two things I ask of you. This is amazing the way that he asked this. Two things that I ask of you. Deny them not to me before I die. Remove far from me falsehood and lying. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Don't let me be someone who's a liar. And don't let me be rich or poor. Because he says, feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Gets back to Sister Pat's comment there, right? We start feeling self-sufficient. I don't need anybody. Sounds like what Pharaoh said, right? Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? But look at the other side. Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. The writer here of Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 7 through 9 was concerned about both ends of the spectrum, wasn't he? He's saying that either end can be a problem, but also either end can be saved.
Studying 1 Timothy recently, and he has a warning for the rich, but he also has a warning for those that want to be rich.
That's right. That's right.
Dangers on both ends.
There's dangers on both ends. Most definitely. Okay. Any questions so far? Any comments?
Yeah, further context of that, Proverbs 11 is worth reading in your own time. Pat?
Yes. Agreed. Okay. Does the Bible teach that it's wrong to be wealthy? No. It does not. Wealth, riches by themselves are not evil. Right? They're not. By themselves, they're not evil. But we must be careful. First, we must be careful how we obtain them. How do we get these riches? How do we obtain this wealth? We need to be careful. Proverbs 13 and verse 11. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. Whoever gathers little by little. Notice this one. Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 4. A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Now, we were supposed to talk about industry and laziness next week, so we're not going to get into this, other than the fact that it tells you that there is a way in which you gain riches. You gain wealth, right? And it's not by doing nothing. And then, whoever is greedy for unjust gain troubles his own household, but he who hates bribes will live. And we'll get into more of that in just a minute, I hope. But all of this to let us know that there is a way in which wealth should be obtained, right? And it's not through dishonest gain. It's not through some quick, get-rich-quick scheme, right? Actually, it put down a note that said, does this not describe, well, actually, I got that saved for later. So I'll save it for later. It comes real quick, though, so don't worry. It's like next slide. So, gradually and ethically obtained versus, here's the next slide.
Well, I just want to point out that last verse that was up there. Hates bribes will live. I'm glad God put that in the Bible because a lot of people look at that. Here's the verse that says, bribes avail much. You get a lot done with a bribe.
Yeah.
As if it's okay to bribe the inspector or whatever.
Yeah. No, you're right. And it's all a matter of looking at context, right, and how it's used.
Yeah.
All right, so an inheritance gained hastily in the beginning will not be blessed in the end. Getting rich quick is not the way to go, especially, again, an inheritance gained hastily. Others say wrongly. Other translations say wrongly in that. A truthful person will have many blessings, but those eager to get rich, those eager to get rich will be punished. Eager to get rich will be punished. So, this is where I put down just a short little phrase. Dangers of gambling, including lottery. I had that down there. People say, well, what's wrong with gambling?
You're seeking money that's not been earned, and a lot of times you're being a fool because the other guy knows he's going to take your money.
Yeah. So there's a number of things, including it goes against the principle of work, which we'll talk about next week. Another thing is you're taking money from someone else that you did not earn. Gets back to that, which we'll talk about next week. But another thing is it's really just a sign of what? Okay, so now that you've said that, can't keep my stuff up here. What is greed? Thank you for answering that way. Just help me ride it along. What is greed? Somebody define it for me. What's greed? Yes, sir.
The love of money.
Okay, a love of money. Wow, say that one more time. An unhealthy desire to have something you haven't obtained. Okay? Just had to think through it for a second. Brother Jeff, did you say something?
I say it's a form of, what is it?
Covetousness. It's a form of covetousness, right?
Right.
Yes, sir, Brother Chris.
Never having enough.
Never having enough.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one of the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, covetousness.
Greed is,
Yeah.
thou shalt not covet.
That's right. And we often associate it with money, and that could very well be. But in some ways, greed can be more than just money.
Borderline gluttony.
Okay? Caleb's not in here, but we said the other night we were going to talk about gluttony after we had all the eating that we did. And so now here's our lesson on gluttony, right? It's a desire to have more and more and more. Greed is the insatiable desire to have more. Insatiable desire to have more. Turn in your Bibles to the book of Proverbs chapter 30, verses 5 and 6. I think that's the right, or I'm sorry, 15 and 16. Chapter 30, verses 15 and 16. Someone, whoever gets there, read those two verses for me.
I got it.
All right?
The leech has 2 daughters, give and give. There are 3 things that will not be satisfied, 4 that will not say enough. Sheol, the infertile womb, earth that is never satisfied with water, and fire that never says enough.
In some ways, this is some examples of some descriptions of greed. Notice what he says. The leech has 2 daughters. Give and give. Named them the same thing. Why? I need more. Give me more. Give me more. Give me more. Give me more. I heard a lesson on this particular couplet of verses. And he said in his sermon that the leech has a stomach that can be filled with 5 times as much blood as its own body weight. So if it's empty and it's, let's use some gross numbers, 1 pound, which I hope you never see a 1 pound leech, but then it could fill its belly up to 5 pounds. Okay, you get that. Give and give and give and give. More, and that had to be my wife, didn't it, for letting her phone go off. So, give and give and give. Notice the second thing that he's up there like you got up there. 3 things are never satisfied. 4 never say enough. Sheol. What is Sheol? It's the grave. This is another thing he said. He said, do you realize that in every second, 2 more people basically die? So in the time frame that I've started talking about, every second, 6 more people have died, 8 more people have died, 10 more people in the world. Do you realize that? I don't think about it that way. But yet, Sheol, the grave, is never full. The barren womb, the woman who can't have a child, she can't be satisfied. She desires a child. She can't be satisfied without one. The land never satisfied with water. It's like the desert, who gets a little bit of rain. 2 minutes after it's rain, what does it look like? The desert. It can't get enough water. And a fire. As long as there's something to burn and you don't put it out, what will a fire do? It'll burn. It won't get enough. Greed is the insatiable desire to have more. It's an excessive desire to acquire or possess more than what one needs or deserves, especially with respect to material wealth. But I thought that was pretty interesting. To acquire or possess more than what one needs or deserves. Someone's definition of that, but I definitely agree with the more than what one needs. I mean, who's to say we deserve any of it? So, Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied, and never satisfied are the eyes of man. Proverbs 27 and verse 20. Never satisfied are the eyes of man. Greed is dangerous. The desire to have more and more and more is dangerous, isn't it? Who's it dangerous for? Well, the first person it's dangerous for is, well, not that one, is the person who's greedy, right? Proverbs 1 and verse 19. Actually, let's just turn and read that. Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs chapter 1 and beginning down actually around verse 10. Turn and read it. Actually, I'm going to read from the New Century if you don't mind in this particular case. Proverbs chapter 1 beginning around verse 10. My child, if sinners try to lead you into sin, do not follow them. They will say, come with us. Let's ambush and kill someone. Let's attack some innocent people just for fun. Let's swallow them alive as death does. Let's swallow them whole as the grave does. We will take all kinds of valuable things and fill our houses with stolen goods. Come join us and we will share with you stolen goods. My child, do not go along with them. Do not do what they do. They are eager to do evil and are quick to kill. It is useless to spread out a net right where the birds can see it. But sinners will fall into their own traps. They will only catch themselves. Notice verse 19. All greedy people end up this way. Greed kills selfish people. Greed kills selfish people. So this is why, one of the reasons why I have a hard time teaching this particular class is because, well, is wanting something bad? Is it wrong to want things? See, it's so vague, as it were. The answer to the question, it's not wrong to want certain things. It's wrong to desire them to the point that they become, obviously, if they become your idol, they become something that you covet to that point, and you'll do anything for it, then obviously that becomes wrong. But where is the line? And I can't just, this is not one of those situations where I can just walk up to you and say, there's the line. Don't cross that one. You're good otherwise. Because it's different for different people. Because some of us are more apt to continue to want. Some people seem very satisfied with whatever. Right? So it's not a black and white, real easy to say you can't want for more than $1. If you want for more than $1, I can't give you that. But what I can say is we need to be careful because greed kills selfish people. Not only will it kill the person who is greedy, greedy people bring trouble to their own families, but the person who can't be paid to do wrong will live. Who else does it kill? The people who are associated with them, including their families. Okay? You think about people who are addicted to gambling and things of that nature. It's destroyed not only them, but their families. But it's not just that. It's people who are always wanting more and more, and then they'll be willing to do whatever it takes to get there, including maybe work and not be at home. And again, I'm not saying we're not supposed to work. Obviously, I think we should. But we have to be careful. All right. Characteristics of the greedy. There are certain characteristics that are associated with greedy people. So if we're looking at it and say, well, am I a greedy person? Well, let's look at a couple of things that might help us, okay? Number one, you're never satisfied. Have you ever said this? Okay, I would do like Chris did last week and say, okay, everybody who's done this, raise your hands, and then when I'll say, well, all right, now the rest of you go ahead and raise your hands because everybody's done this in some form or fashion, right? Have you ever said, if I could just get to here, then that'd be all I'd want? I know I have. Way too many times. If we could just get to where we could, right? And then as soon as you get to, then it's, well, now I just need to get to right here, and then I'm good, right? It always changes, doesn't it? We need to be careful. If we feel ourselves that we're never satisfied, and by the way, you could include with that, never grateful for what we do have. So that would be one way. But here's another. You hoard what you do have. I need to be careful, don't I? Notice what it says in the book of James. We'll get back to Proverbs here in just a second. We're not going to talk a whole lot about what it says in James, but I want us to read it. James chapter 5. I believe that's where I'm wanting to go. James chapter 5 and verse 1. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments are moth-eaten. What does that mean, by the way? Yeah, worn out, or in some respects, never used, right? Never used. Rotted and moth-eaten. If it's moth-eaten, it hadn't been used. It's been in there long enough that you don't use it. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. You put it back, and you keep putting it back, and you keep putting it back. Behold the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you. And the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. You hoard what you have. Proverbs 11 and verse 24. One freely gives, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give, and only suffers want. I can still remember over and over again your dad saying that if God will provide, you give to the right things. When I say your dad, I was talking to Lance. If you do the right things and you give in the right way, God will provide. I'm not worried about it. That's what he would say. I'm not worried about it. And you know what? I think he's right. Matter of fact, I know he's right. I know he's right. How about this one? There's a couple of ways to look at this one, actually. One pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. Now, one way in which we can look at this, one pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. In other words, you could look at this positive. There's a positive side of looking at this thing. He thinks that he's got everything, even though he really hasn't got anything. But he's grateful for what he's got. And then the one who is poor, the other man is humble. He pretends to be poor, but he's got lots of stuff. So you could look at that in a positive way. But you could also look at it as one who pretends to be rich yet has nothing. He likes to put on airs as though he's got something, but he really doesn't have anything. And the one who has something that can use it, he pretends to be poor. Why? That way he doesn't have to give it. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. Characteristics of the greedy: never satisfied. By the way, in never satisfied, the one that comes to mind to me is a man over in the book of 1 Kings chapter 21. Something, if you've been following your daily Bible reading, it wasn't too long ago that you read it. And his name is Ahab. And you remember what he really, really, really wanted? Naboth's vineyard. And you remember what he did when Naboth said, "No, I'm not selling you my vineyard." He pouted. He pouted. He went into his room and laid down and turned his back toward everybody, and I pictured him as sucking on his thumb, laying on his bed. He was never satisfied. He had, look at all the stuff, but he wanted that, and he wasn't satisfied without it. All right. What's the proper use of wealth? How are we supposed to use what we have?
With wisdom.
Okay. Excellent. With wisdom. I asked a poor question again. But that's an excellent answer to my poor question. Okay? Give back to God for the work of the Lord. Okay? And these are not necessarily in the priority order here, okay? I'm just listing some things, and I knew that was on there, so I went ahead and went to it. Yes, sir.
I always think about God telling Abraham, "I will bless you and be a blessing." Kind of summarizes that idea, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's right. I will bless you. And that was one of the things I meant to do at the beginning when we talked about, is it wrong to be rich? Look how many people God blessed in the Bible that were faithful people. Abraham being one of those, Job being another, David being another. All these men who had wealth, but that's not what they trusted in. That's not what caused them to be righteous. That's not what caused them to be someone that God desired to bless. It was their trust and confidence in Him, right? Yes, ma'am.
What you just said made me think of the parable of the talents, and the one that just didn't do anything, just sat on it, was rebuked for it. So it's the same principle, whether you have a lot or little, whatever God gives you, you need to make the most of it.
That's right. Yep. That's right. Whatever you have.
Same track.
That's right. All right, so we need to obviously provide for our own. That's one ways in which we use wealth, material blessings, to honor God, by providing for our own, right? 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8 says, if you don't, you're worse than an infidel, right? Unbeliever. So we obviously know that that's the right way to use it. We know giving back to God and then giving to others. Right? This is the part about the generosity side of it, right? We talked about the greed and the problems associated with it, but there are ways in which we can use our wealth that we'll get to in a second here. We'll honor God. Right? We give to others, number one, because it's just the right thing to do. Right? So why should I give to somebody else? Well, it's the right thing to do. Right thing to do. Which one did I have for that? Proverbs 3, verse 27. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come again tomorrow, or I will give it, when you have it with you. It kind of reminds you of the last verse of James chapter 4, doesn't it? Which says, to him that knows to do right and doesn't do it, to him it's sin. Giving to others, especially in their need, is just simply the right thing to do. Why do we give to others? Because oppressing the poor insults God. Not helping them insults him. Notice in Proverbs, Proverbs 22, verse 22. Do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate. For the Lord will plead their cause and rob of life those who rob them. Proverbs 21 and verse 13. Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered. Neither one of those are the ones I was looking for. But I'll get to it in a minute, I'm sure. It's in my notes somewhere. Oppressing the poor obviously insults God. But helping them honors him. Oh, there it is, Proverbs 14, verse 31. Whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. He honors him. That's Proverbs 14 and verse 31. Proverbs 3 and verse 9. Honor the Lord with your wealth. Go ahead. And with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. But how? Honor the Lord with your wealth. And then the last one that I have there is God will bless those who help others. And I have lots of verses on that. Proverbs 14:21 again, 28:27, 11:24 through 26, 22, verse 9, and 19 and verse 17. And all of those have to deal with that if we help others, God will continue to bless us. The proper use of wealth. I think that was the last one. Yes, that was the last one. So, how many of us are wealthy? Go ahead and raise your hand, all of you. Might as well, because you are. Yeah, there you go. Even John did. So, not this John, but that John, the little John back there. We're all wealthy. Now, you might say, well, compared to so-and-so, well, yeah, but compared to 99% of the people on earth, we're wealthy. And even if we're not considered wealthy by the standards of the people around us, we still have stuff. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't use those to honor God. And part of honoring God is being generous to others. Being generous to Him and being generous to others. And it's so easy, folks. It is so easy to get greedy and always want more. Or to get to the point where we say, but I'm putting it back just in case. I'm a just in case person as well, by the way. And I always have been. Right? I always want to prepare for whatever the worst scenario is, I want to be prepared for it. Right? That's why I did everything. Whether it was in school or playing ball or whatever. I tried to think of what was the worst case scenario and be prepared for that. If I can be prepared for that, I'm ready for anything. Guess what? You can't do it. And if I do that all the time, especially with respect to what God has blessed me with, I'll just hoard it and I won't use it. And by the way, that will become the worst case scenario. Questions? Comments? Yes, ma'am.
So we all have to learn contentment. And I'm with you. I have to learn to
Let go.
But we have to make a plan. We have to make a plan to give. And so if we want to be extreme givers, then we have to make a plan to do that.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that you have to be a millionaire to be an extreme giver. You can be an extreme giver as long as you're making a plan to do that. You just have to plan for it.
Yep. This is exactly right. Exactly right. Anybody else?
Lois probably don't want to say it, but her everything, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going down the list, but there was so much stuff in the house, a lot of it was good stuff. And we had to just junk it because there wasn't enough time to dispose of it. And when we cleaned out the house, we cleaned out the second floor, the rafters came up and cracked the ceiling. But what good did it do?
Yeah. You know, we used to joke at our house, and I'm sure some of you have done this as well, when our kids were small, that instead of going and buying them new toys, what we could do is just go in their room and package up some of the toys that they haven't used in forever and give it to them as new again because they haven't used it. They wouldn't know, right? We can have Christmas all over again. You know, we could probably do that with the stuff that we have. I know I could do it with my books. My wife could sneak in there and grab some books off the bookshelf and present them to me for Christmas. I go, wow, this looks like a good book. So we just have to be careful that we're not always wanting something more and never using what we have. Don't try that, by the way. I'm going to go home and catalog them. All right, I appreciate your time.
Good evening. I want to just offer a couple quick words real quick. So earlier in the week, one of the guys that's in my unit, the National Guard unit, called me. He said that his brother committed suicide, and it's always a tragic thing. But one of the things that he talked about, he said, man, we didn't know. Like there's no signs, no clue. You know, the kid was 23, just finished his education program, got a job offer. You know, there were no real signs in his life, and he said that was the hard part, right? There's no real reason why, and that's what they're struggling with is why did he do it? Right? When you look at them, there's some people out there, we all understand this, right? There's some people you kind of see it and you see these signs, you go, something's not right. And that's what they're struggling with is there are really no signs. All right, but, you know, it kind of got me to thinking, just a reminder, right? One of my favorite lessons that I ever heard was in the book of Ecclesiastes, right? When we think of what exactly is life all about, right? What's the purpose of life? What is all of this about? And when we look in the book of Ecclesiastes, we think about what King Solomon was talking about here, and one just kind of starts off with everything's vanity, right? It's all just trying to grasp after the wind. Right? There's wisdom, right? And understanding that's not it. That's not what people are seeking in life, right? We try to seek after wisdom and hope that we get some type of fulfillment there, and that's not it. Right? Self-indulgence. There's vanity of wealth, and we talked about this just a little bit ago, right? Some people they look at life and they go, well, if I could just attain this certain amount of wealth, things would be okay. Right? Some sort of honor, right? A specific level that you've made it in society, right? I'm on, whatever that club is for the city that you live in. That's where all of the big wigs are at, right? If you're just a part of that club, whatever it is, who knows? Maybe it's the country club or something. I don't know. I'm not a popular guy. I know it's hard to believe. But there are all of these things, right, that people seek. And Ben mentioned this earlier. I heard when we were in South Korea, there was a friend of ours there. He's a major. And he was talking about something very similar to this. And he said, I remember when I was a young guy in the Army and I was a private, and I thought, man, if I could just make it to sergeant, I would be okay, right? I get to make the rules and I get to do this and that. And he said he made it to the position of a sergeant, and he realized that wasn't where it was at. All right, he said, well, if I could become an officer, being a commissioned officer, that's where it would be at. And so he went to be commissioned, and he became a second lieutenant. He was a commissioned officer, right? And he realized, man, this isn't it. I'm on this pole over here. I'm just at the very bottom of it now. He said, well, if I could just make it to a field grade officer, if I could just become a major, which is a field grade officer, then I would have some sway, right? And he's at 30 years at this point, right? 30 years of chasing, if I could just make it to that next level, I would be okay. And we all, I think, do that in our lives, right? If I could just do this, right? If I could reach whatever this is. But I think we all know, right? That's not really what it is. And the very end of Ecclesiastes, right? At the very end of it, you'd think I'd be there, but I'm not. But the very end of Ecclesiastes, in 12 verse 13 says, in the end of the matter, all has been heard, right? Fear God and keep his commandments. Right? After all the things that he sought in life, wealth and fame and knowledge and all of these things, he said, what, this isn't it. All the things I sought after, it gave me no fulfillment. Right? The conclusion of all of it was to fear God and keep his commandments. And so when my friend told me this, I thought, man, again, someone else taking their life. Why? We don't know why. But I suspect, like most people, they're looking for something. They're looking for a purpose. Hopefully, all of us here understand we do have a purpose. Right? There is a purpose, there is a reason There is a conclusion. We've heard this before, right? If you're not a child of God, you have to ask yourself the question at some point, why not? Do I just choose not to believe and obey? Is there a reason why I keep going down this path? Right, hearing the gospel, we do that often, right? If you come here in similar faces, week after week, you come here, you hear the gospel, that's an easy one, right? And then you finally get to the point of belief, right? Do I believe, right? Do I believe the things that I hear? Do I believe the things that I'm reading, right, that I'm studying? Do I believe that God created everything, right? Do I believe that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, down to this earth, right, to live a life not for himself, right, but for us? Do I believe that stuff? Do I believe that he died on the cross? But just like the kids and I, we had this conversation. I don't know. We have some weird conversations sometimes on the way to school. But I don't know how we got on the conversation, but at some point we got on belief, right? And the famous passage, I believe it was in James, right? But even the demons believe, right? It's not just enough to believe, right? Just because someone believes that there is a God that exists, that's not enough, right? There's more to it, right? With that belief, there has to become an action, right? Understanding that I'm a sinner and that I repent of those sins. All right, making confession, right, of my sins, but also of my faith in Christ and what he's done for me. And ultimately, showing that obedience, right? Cleansing myself of the old man, and being born again in the waters of baptism. And then, of course, continuing on through life, right? Trying our best to remain faithful, learning and growing every day. So the question is, have you done that, right? We're all seeking something. Hopefully this is what we're seeking, right? Hopefully we understand that at the end of all of it, it's none of the other things that we're looking for. It's not that next step. It's great to have ambition and try to move up. But what are we really seeking in life, right? If there's anything that we can do for anyone here, whether it's just prayers, you need help of some sort, or you want to believe and obey the gospel, whatever we can do to assist, come forward at this time. Let it be known.
Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in his grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the Just a few announcements before we're dismissed. Those on the sick list, well, we got less tonight than we had Sunday, which that's a good thing. Matter of fact, we were able to put some of them to work tonight, so. But we're glad to see that Sister Christie's back with us, as well as the Clemens and the Reels and half the Rays. Sister Crystal Ray is still having some stomach issues, and she's at home. We want to continue to remember Mabel Smith, as she's still struggling with her sickness, and that's where they are tonight. But we want to continue to remember baby Harlow. We're glad to see Olivia has made it back with us. Glad to see that smiling face walk through the door tonight. Sister Angie Alexander, which we had mentioned is out of ICU. Please still keep her in your prayers. Sister Sarah Clifton, as she is still battling the sickness. And please keep Brother Ricky too. I mean, he struggles with his health a lot. Couple of new ones on the list. Lincoln's at home sick, and that's where Chris is. He's at home with him. And Brother Larry Walker will be having a surgery Thursday the 16th, so let's keep him in our prayers. Also, please keep the Martis family in your prayers. It's the loss of their son. That's the friend of the Walker family, friends of the Walker family, and I know they'll be going through a tough time here. Men's class tomorrow night, 6:30 here at the building. We'll be studying Titus chapter 3. And then next week's lessons will be lesson 13 and 14 for Wednesday night class. So be prepared for both those lessons, lessons 13 and 14. I think that's all that I've got in the way of announcements. If I overlooked anything, please get with me. We'll make sure we'll make mention of them Sunday morning. If you'll please be standing, Brother Isaac Kennedy will dismiss us in prayer.
Let us bow. Holy Father, King Most High, we humbly approach your throne, thanking you for the many blessings you have given to us. Thank you for this opportunity to come together once again and to study your word. Help us, Father, to use what we've learned here tonight and apply it to our lives. Help us to always be about your work as your Son was, Father, and help us to be a bright and shining light to the community. Father, please be with those that are sick, that were announced, and help them to recover if it be your will, Father. And please comfort them and their families. Father, please be with those that are traveling, that they'll be safe in their travels. Please be with the tumultuous situation in Israel. Help that to be resolved peacefully. Through your Son's name we pray. Amen.